Welcome to the Cool Fireman Podcast, a virtual firehouse kitchen table with Matt, Adam, Brian, Doug, and Freddy, where they discuss everything that matters in today's fire service. Now let's get to the show.
It's not supposed to be like, hello, welcome back.
Well, there you go. Welcome back. How do we segue into this? I don't know.
So yeah, I found this article, had it saved on the side, but thought it'd be interesting for us to talk about is 4 critical issues facing the fire service today. So basically it goes through and in this author's opinion, what he feels are 4 things that are critical in the fire service today. And the one that he has listed first is securing funding for and recruitment and retention. So according to U.S. Fire Administration, the United States is home to almost 1.2 million firefighters working in 30,000 departments. 900,000 of them work in volunteer combination departments. But they are seeing that even in career departments, many municipalities are continuing to cut funding, which means these departments have to respond to the same call volumes or more with less staffing. So I guess where we're at is, do you guys feel that is something that is critical in the fire service right now?
So let me ask this. Pause. Do we want to do an intro and then do this? Or do we want to just go right into it?
I think we're just into it.
Okay, we're just into it. Okay. So we'll do the moment of silence at the end and everything else.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I didn't know how we were going to do that. Which again, we can do it however we need to. We can.
So let's start over. Matt, if you're listening to this, we're going to start over because it's late and we're idiots.
We're all giddy.
Yeah. So, welcome back, Cool Fireman Podcast. It is, it's a beautiful day outside. I'm sure you guys were enjoying your day. Thanks for listening to us here on the.
That's not cheesy at all.
As we do every week, hopefully you guys all enjoyed hanging out with us on the 30th at our live event. Can you believe what Doug did? I can't believe it either. If you didn't see it, you should have been there. But like we do every week, we're going to real quick do a moment of silence for those that we lost in the fire and first responder community. Thank you all again for humoring us and participating in that with us. Thank you to everyone who attended the American Red Cross live event. We had a great time. It was so much fun. And we plan on doing something like that in the near future. And we are well into now the month of July with Unkie seasoning giveaways and stuff like that. So make sure you are purchasing and winning special prizes.
All kinds of stuff going on.
All kinds of stuff. So, without further ado, found this article that I thought would be fun for us to kind of talk about on the podcast. And it's 4 critical issues facing the fire service today. And according to this author, these are things that he feels like might be at a tipping point and could affect the fire service now and in the future. So the first one that he has listed is securing funding and recruitment and retention. So according to the U.S. Fire Administration, the United States is home to almost 1.2 million firefighters working in 30,000 departments. About 900,000 of those firefighters work in volunteer or combination departments, and those departments rely heavily on volunteers in those communities. But even in career departments, many municipalities continue to cut funding, which means that many of these departments have to respond to the same call volumes or more calls, which it seems to be going up every year, with less staffing. So that low staffing is causes not only burnout with the firefighters, it's also it can be I guess a safety issue, I believe, when you have overworked firefighters who might be working 96-hour shifts, picking up overtime, running calls in the middle of the night. They're getting tired and stuff like that because our fire departments are understaffed and unable to adequately fill shifts and trucks. So I believe wholeheartedly that it is a problem right now. I don't believe there's a perfect solution to it because it's not like we can just snap our fingers and each department hires 20 more guys, because right now it seems that we have a bit of a supply problem to the demand. It seems to be shifting in the right direction, but there are not a lot of people going into our profession right now, at least that used to be. It used to be you'd be going for one job against 200 people. Now you can pretty much compare contracts and figure out where you want to work because there's 10 departments that are hiring 10 people.
So
yeah, along with signing bonuses too. Yeah. That's happening in the nurses world. There's no, where we grew up as kids, like you get a job and you work until you retire. Right. The loyalty to your department is gone.
Yeah. And I think that's something, and I think you hit a nail on the head. I was going to say, I'm going to unpack that kind of in reverse order. Adam, you mentioned something that we actually talked about a couple podcasts ago, but I think it's very relevant, is about an organization trying to prepare itself for the long term, right? Like the chief officers of today, the station captains of today are worried about who's going to take their spot when they go to leave. And I think, as you look at organizations, there are some organizations that, those officers have a high turnover rate that's coming. It's like a wave set, basically, different. You can go to different places on the beach and some of those waves are coming faster than others. And some have high waves, some have low waves. They're all different. But I think one of the things that you really hit on was the supply problem. And Adam, you hit on that, the dedication. Do we want to have an expectation that our right seat captain is going to be hired from the outside and not have the local knowledge to run that district, but because they were able to make more money, they're coming from the outside? I think that makes every single person in the organization cringe. And up till 2 or 3 years ago, that was never even an option. Like, it was not even discussed. But because of the fact of the supply problem, it's come up in conversation. And I think that no fire chief, I don't want to say no fire chief, but the majority of fire chiefs do not want to bring in a station captain that does not have the local knowledge, that does not have the local connection. And that's just me speaking. And I say that at least for the region that I'm in, that is not the case. They do not want that. I don't know what you guys are experiencing elsewhere, but I also think it's a societal problem, just like what Adam was kind of hinting around to. When you look at nurses and, line workers or anybody in trade work, there was something to be said about loyalty of saying, hey, I retired and all I got was this crummy watch, right? But you worked there for 30 years and you gave 30 years of your life to something and you were dedicated. I mean,
because it meant something.
It meant something, but there was a lot of, I'm going to go somewhere and I probably don't, I probably ought not go somewhere, but it's also bigger than that. We don't value marriage like we used to, right? My tagline is faith, but I mean, like, look at the line at the divorce court. So if we're not willing to be married or value our relationships, if divorce is an option for most people, what is a job? It's nothing, right? Like, because I can just get another one, right? And so if we can swipe left or right for the person that we're going to be with in the next day or two on an app, That's a societal problem, and it's a rethinking problem. And I know we don't want to get into that rabbit hole, but it goes back to the last question or the first question you asked, and the last thing I want to unpack, which is to the budget problem. How can you keep up if a chief values that seat ready position, and he says, I'm willing to pay for someone to stay because I value that, then he has to adjust everyone else in that organization so they don't have compression. And then if he does that, or she does that, I say he, if that chief does that, then all of a sudden, now that organization is the one that everybody wants to work at. Not because they value it, but because he valued it or she valued it. And then now everyone else is trying to compete. That seems very complex, but that's what's happening at that management level. Is we have organizations, and we have one in North Carolina that says, I want to be the highest paying organization in the state. And their city council is just adamant about that. They just said,
they're just fine with it.
They said, we're going to have the highest salary. I dare you to try to beat us. We'll raise it. They don't care. They have a good tax base, and that's what they want. But, and they're not the highest in the country, but they're the highest in the state, and that's what they're okay with. And we talked about possible guests, and I would love to have this chief on. His name is Dan Jones. He was the fire chief at Chapel Hill. And one of the things that he said, and his name is fresh in my brain because we were just talking about it, is he said, every government has a dollar. That dollar represents the tax base. And I don't care what side of the party you want to be on, Republican or Democrat, nobody wants to raise the tax dollar. So all you're doing is taking that dollar and cutting it up. It's like a whole cake. You buy a birthday cake. You can either buy a big one, you can buy a little one. But at the end of the day, you got one birthday cake.
Yeah.
So how big are your slices? How much is the fire department going to get? And then the next thing is, how big is that fire chief going to split up his piece of that cake? And so what is he going to dedicate it to? Is he going to put it in salaries? Is he going to put it in CIP programs for trucks? Is he going to put it into training? How is he going to divvy up that money for the sake of the organization? Because at the end of the day, that's it, right? And I'm not saying pro or con to this, but then the other struggle is not only is that it's when you inject now contracts. We're in a right to work state, but when you inject contracts into it, it's a totally different animal, right? Because then that takes his control out of it and says, now I don't have that control of that piece of my cake, right? Because that's negotiated. Now I've only got a third of my cake slice to deal with. It's my slice, but I didn't have a control of the knife right then. It went, boop, there it is. So now here's what's within my control. And so it's a funding issue because party politics doesn't matter. Nobody wants to raise taxes, right? It's about who's getting what piece of the cake. Then it's the supply problem that Adam mentioned, and it's also the societal problem of a lack of dedication. So I don't know. That was a lot for me to unpack, but I think you hit on a lot, and I didn't want to miss any one of those.
For sure. Unc, you got anything?
No, he gets it. I mean, it's loyalty. It's like I kind of run into the problem. I think we talked about. I'm watching all these people get recognized for X amount of years of service, and what really grinds my gear is like they just did a huge wave of people that been recognized for 15 years of service. I've been sitting here. I'm 3 years late on getting mine. People are getting theirs a week early, a week before they hit the 15-year mark. I'm sitting here 3 years late and not received mine or recognized at all. And my chief, my district chief, he knows about this issue, and he's gone and requested it twice and has gotten it twice in his possession, supposedly, according to his words. I've never seen it. So it's just like the littlest things. It's amazing how like a firefighter will take the littlest thing and get bent out of shape about. I mean, I'm been out of shape about it.
You know, with that being said, there's a I guess it's a theory or a practice in hospitality, and I know a bit about this because my wife is heavy into hospitality business, is you have to focus not only on the external guest, which is the person, like, let's say you work at a hotel, the person who comes and stays at your hotel or whatever, but you also have to focus on the internal guest. And the internal guest is your employees, the people that help make everything run. Because if all you do is focus on the external guest and make sure that the external guest is always taken care of, and you forget about the internal guest, then the external guest is not going to get taken care of because your internal guest doesn't give a shit anymore. Because you're running them into the ground. You don't give a crap about whatever. And I think that goes to show, kind of with what we were talking about.
And I want to add a little bit more to it. Everyone's like, oh, that's just a piece of paper. Yeah, a piece of paper and stuff like that. To me, it is the little things that keep us happy. When we don't have trucks that run, we're driving out of pickup trucks. Our equipment don't work. We are severely understaffed. We can't keep equipment staff on the road. We're lying to our other people in our department, outside of our department, about our capabilities. But if we get a fire, somebody's going to die and we're all screwed. And all we ask is we're in the trenches trying to keep the facade going, try to do our job. And all we want is like a little pat on the back. Give us a little pat on the back when we deserve it. A little piece of paper. I don't need no fanfare or nothing like that. Send in the guard mail. So that's my little gripe, We don't need much to keep us happy. That's it. Pizza party with a thin little slice. We'll take it.
Anchovies or none?
At this point, we only gonna take what they give us, which isn't much.
Well, that leads us into number 2 here, which is ensuring firefighter safety. He says is a critical issue. According to the NFPA, there were 48 on-duty firefighter fatalities in 2019. Heart attacks remain the leading cause of death for firefighters as the result of overexertion and stress. Thousands more are injured at fire incidents and scenes. In addition to the immediate risks of injury and death, firefighters face a 250% greater risk of developing many different types of cancer compared to the general public. Meanwhile, more firefighters are also suffering from behavioral health issues, such as anxiety, depression, PTSD, and suicidal ideations. And many of them don't seek help or lack adequate healthcare access. So, firefighter safety, I think it's huge. We just a couple weeks ago had a neighboring community lost a firefighter to suicide, and kind of rocked this community, because it was one of those ones where you hear people saying, like, he got off shift and he said he literally said I got to get home because my wife is going up north for a girls' weekend, and I get to spend the weekend with the kids and whatever. And whatever reason, that was it. So there are people who are silently suffering. There are people who are contracting cancer at a ridiculously high rate. And thank God that the cancer presumption laws and bills are getting passed in states and what have you. But is that proactive or is that reactive? Because
so reactive. It's so reactive.
Because what you're saying is, hey, when you retire and you get cancer, we'll help you out. I look at that. I look at that as like, hey man, I'd love to just not get cancer. That'd be sweet.
Right. And how do you not get cancer?
And you have to get it in 10 years of retiring.
Stuff has to not burn. I'm going to put my fire marshal hat on here for a second. Right? Yeah. Stuff is going to burn, but you have to You have to change the mindset in the firehouse instead of saying, hey, man, the big one's going to come today and I cannot wait, right? To understand the totality of what you're asking for. Number one is the worst day of your life when somebody calls and, somebody has committed suicide or whatever, and that rocks you to the core. We're talking about another type of tragedy rocking you. And I get it. There's a certain amount of adrenaline and endorphin and everything else. Like I said, I've said it on this podcast before. Every time that fire truck leaves at headquarters, I still find myself getting up and looking out the window to see them leave. And there's a part of me that wants to go. I get it. But at the same time, that is going to somebody's worst day of their life. So quit wishing it on people, number one. And number two is, if you don't want cancer, don't wish it on yourself. Right?
Yeah.
So when we ask you, and this is where I really get passionate about it, is when we ask you to help out with public education, don't pawn that off and say that's someone else's job. Last time I checked, I'm not the hero that the 5-year-old looks up to. It's you. And I'm talking to the one that's listening to this. It's the firefighter riding on the truck. It's the captain in the right seat, right? It is that person that they see as that firefighter.
It's the door kicker. Yeah.
Right. It is. It's not the guy who rides around and writes parking tickets for fire lanes, right? It's not. It's not me. It's you. And so they care about what you care about. And newsflash, last time I checked, you hope that their house burned down. You're not literally them, but you hope somebody's did, right? And that's the hard part about this. So like you just said, you don't want them to get cancer. You don't want yourself to get cancer, but yet you're wishing for it. North Carolina just in the last couple of days, I know this recording will be later on, but we just secured our cancer presumption bill. And I am like permanent funding, and I'm super stoked about that. As a guy who's went to hundreds of fire scenes, as investigations and everything else, and the safety piece of this, I kicked myself in the butt because cancer, when I first started investigating fires in that decay phase, when we're at our highest risk and our lowest vulnerability, I won't say lowest vulnerability, highest vulnerability, when I should have been wearing my respirator and I wasn't. For me, at 35, when I buried a high school friend of mine who had a brain tumor, I am certain it was cancer, and I am certain that I will have it. And the next thing that I did after I left his funeral, at the very next open enrollment, was I signed up for a cancer plan, because I knew deep down that I would get some type, and I don't know when that's going to be, and I don't know how, but I do know the why. The why was because I didn't care. I didn't care enough for my family. And now looking back on it, and even to this day, when I have to put on that particulate respirator as I'm trying to dig out that whole room, I am fussing to myself. I'm going, I hate this thing. I'm already going to have it. Why do I got to wear it? You know why I say, and then I tell myself, I'm doing it for the guy that's watching me behind me. That's why I'm doing it. I'm doing it for the one who's looking at me to see if I'm doing it, because I'm responsible to lead from the front and to have it on. So when you talk about firefighter safety, we're guilty of that from the top down. I think we're guilty of that, whether it's cancer, the heart attack. I've sat in enough chief level stuff. I'm not so sold that it's not genetic. There's genetic testing. And I mean, how many cardiac events have you gone to in a gym with some of the most fittest people? I think that
I joke all the time at work. People that get hurt at the gym, that throw their back out, they pull them out, they tear their quad, whatever. I joke constantly, and I work out. I do low impact stuff. I do whatever, like yoga, Tabata type stuff or whatever. But I love to joke. I'm like, hey, look, he wouldn't have tore his Achilles if he didn't come to the gym today. If he'd have sat on the couch and had a donut, he'd be fine. So
I'm not saying that you shouldn't be physically in shape, but this whole
it's an easy joke.
I do Ciabatta.
I'm just saying, I think we're responsible for controlling the controllables. I say that all the time at home and at work, right? And so the controllables of that is you have a physical fitness routine to control as much of what you can control, but some of that's out of your control. Same thing with the firefighter safety. What's our controllables is public education, reducing the number of fire incidents in our community, but knowing that that risk is still going to be there. And if that risk is going to be there, there is a exposure risk that is beyond our control for cancer, but by God, don't wish it on people. And that's probably the fastest way to maybe summarize that thought.
I think it's inevitable that as cancer is a result of a mutation of your cell when it divides. I think if you live long enough, you're going to get cancer. I think what needs to be highlighted and what needs to be addressed is the fact that the environments that we are subject to and in have these elements that can excite, expedite, make that happen, make those mutations of your cells happen quicker. So yeah, be the example.
And to add that, it's not only is the job, not trying to take any away from the job, but it's also the food that we eat.
For sure.
It is totally changed. I've done so much reading and researching. We'll use a bag of potato chips that we all love. It's different today, what they put in it, than it was when we were kids.
Yeah.
I believe that it tastes different.
They're making things cheaper by, taking a food element out and adding a chemical to it. For an example, I'll go for the big corporate right here. McDonald's. People love their French fries because it was cooked in beef tallow. Now it's not. It's put in a type of oil and additives and all this crap into it to make it taste like beef tallow because it's ridiculously cheaper.
It's still the best French fry out there.
Oh, no doubt. It ain't gonna I'm not gonna stop.
No doubt.
Stop here and there, but it's just. I mean, a lot of stuff that the FDA is approving, putting out there, is harmful to us, and it just slides on by. So it's also watch what you eat.
Yeah,
and it's so hard because it's everywhere.
I do wish we would have had longer with our nutritionist episode. She was.
You can bring her back.
Well, I told her we're going to do a follow up after she had her baby. After my congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
But
we need to have you back. So good, such good information.
So our third one is fire department communications / new technology, good/bad ? And what this comes with is mobile devices are fast, reliable, wireless broadband access and are presenting exciting new opportunities for fire services. However, many departments lack these resources to modernize their communication systems, and fire chiefs nationwide have had to make a priority of developing their own mobile transition plans. There are many smartphone apps like Active 911, I Am Responding, or Bricks. These apps page firefighters directly on their phone and also provide relevant details to the types of incidents. Meanwhile, computer-aided dispatch, voice-over internet protocol, and other such apps are giving more information today than they have in the past. Smartwatches offer enormous potential for the fire service with advanced sensors that track location, movement, heart rate, and basically and other measurables. However, are we getting away from the traditional side of firefighting and relying too much on technology? When I first got hired in my first department, every day that you worked, you had to take a map test, and it was on they gave you a blank map, and you had to write out the streets, the address breaks. The city that I worked in had 4 railroad tracks that ran right through the middle of it. So you had to mark out what were the railroad breaks, so you knew where you could cross and where you couldn't cross. And my new department I'm on now, you had to do a map, but for me, I think it took me 6 weeks of being there, and I got my map right. And if I'm being honest, I haven't done a map test in almost 3 years. I've been there almost 3 years because we have bricks, and bricks comes up and gives me the call. You click on it and it routes you right to it. So, I have a pretty good knowledge, I would say, of all the streets in town, all of the businesses. Cause a lot of times dispatch will say, you've got a medical at the Walgreens, or you got a medical at the Kroger or whatever. And you just got to know where it is. They don't give you an address. I feel like I have a pretty good grasp of most of that, but, are we relying too much on technology? Are we staring at the monitor and not the patient, and not, do we have too much information, I guess, is where I'm at. While some of this is awesome and it gives you great, insights and information and ways to diagnose either medical calls or even fire calls, you have plan reviews and pictures and locations of everything. But are we relying way too much on that technology and not like looking at the building and going, okay, the Charlie side's on fire. Let's put water on the Charlie side, instead of, oh, okay, hold on a second here. The HVAC system says this, and we've got to go around and do this and boo, and the entrances are here. It's like, hey man, Chief, can we just put water like right there on that fire part? Like, I got a 2.5. I'll just throw water on it. So, I guess, where are you guys at with technology? Do you guys use technology? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad?
I'm gonna let Adam start.
I don't know. It's more of a case by case basis, really. And people being smart enough to use that technology for what it's intended for, and not relying on it. It's kind of like, it's an extra tool, like you were saying, you're treating the monitor, not the patient, kind of deal. So, I mean, it's a double-edged sword.
So I'll chime in and say, I think it's only useless if it's not used. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, I find value in taking information and using it as part of your decision making. So Freddie, you're 100% spot on. You need to look at what you have and then find the value in the information that you have in front of you. Meaning, if you're talking fire related calls, do you need that information? If you don't, then you're wasting time, right? If you know that you need to put the fire out, that's value. But if you went through the trouble of creating that incident pre-plan, you should already have the institutional knowledge. All you're doing is checking the information to do what? Reaffirm your knowledge.
Yeah.
Right? That's it. And so the same could be said on a medical call. Your signs and symptoms says, man, I got a patient who's pale, cool, clammy. What does the 12 lead say? Well, I'm going to only validate what the signs and symptoms are telling me in front of it. I don't have to be a paramedic to know they may be having some type of cardiac related issue. Oh, let me take their pulse. Right? So I find value in what the author is saying, but I would also dare to go back and say, I think what they need to do is to say we don't need to be reliant on one. They should be tag teamed together. The question is, and I can say this from a community who relies heavily on continuity of operations, a COOP plan, is what happens when it doesn't work, right? When we've had hurricanes come through our community and for 5 days, there is no cell phone. There is no paper forms. We talked about this. I think it was Doug who was on that show specifically when we were talking about it. Like, what are you going to do when your mobile PCR doesn't work? Well, I got paper forms in the truck. Great. That's good. You have that plan. What happens when you have that incident at that hazmat plant and your electronic pre-plan doesn't work? You go back to the institutional knowledge. I love it. I mentioned this in our last podcast. I think I did. If not, it was while we were in between shows. We do summer camps, and one of the things that I love that a cop says, and the reason why I say I love it because the cop says is because they are more to be judged by this than we are because it's ingrained in them. But they say point blank is you have a split-second decision where your career depends on it. Think about it, right?
Yeah.
They're trained for that. But we are no different. We just don't value that statement as much as a cop does because they are worried about taking someone's life. So they value it. Instead of saving the life, they're worried about the taking of the life piece of this. But we should be just as worried as they are. We have to worry about how well do we know our first due if the technology fails. That's my thing, you know? And so I think what you said was spot on. Is who cares if the brick doesn't work as long as when that call drops and they say, hey, respond to Kroger for a chest pain, you know where to go. And that's what scares me. And it kind of goes back to the first question about people coming in. That's why the fire chief is so scared. Because when the driver who just got promoted looks over to the captain who wasn't from here and just got brought in from the outside and goes, hey, do you know where Kroger is? And he goes, no. Crap, the MDT's not working.
Right.
That's not good. So that's where all of those things have to come together. And I think that's kind of where the author is trying to bring all this together is to say, you know, how do we fix that? And, you know, he led off with a great thing talking about funding. You can fix all that with $0. Training focused on departmental goals, on pre-incident plannings, things like that. None of that costs anything. You don't have to buy anything to fix those problems. It just needs to be a shift in the mindset of the organization. That's it.
You know, and it makes me, it reminds me of something I wanted to say when we were talking about that first topic, but you said bringing in captains and stuff like that. And I'll draw a line in the sand right now. I am 100% against bringing in a company officer from the outside, somebody who didn't, let's just say it this way, grow up with the people in the department, because frankly, let me go ahead and say, we all need to be able to do all aspects of the job. Is that fair to say?
Sure.
I think that's fair to say. However, you ready? Here's my but, and it's going to be a big but. All right. I know that Jimmy is scared to death of heights. So guess who I'm not sending up on the ladder to do vertical ventilation? I'm not sending Jimmy. I'm sending Bobby, who has been a roofer in his previous life, and he works great on roofs. He has no problem. And you know why I know that? Because we've sat around the kitchen table for 10 years and we've talked about jobs and stuff like that. So I know my crew, and I know who's good at what and who's good at, and who maybe isn't as great at that stuff. Now you have a captain that comes in and his first order is, hey, Jimmy, head up that ladder. And now he's up there nervous, distracted, and he falls off the roof, God forbid, or it takes him 20 minutes to cut a 4x4 hole because he's nervous. Like, that's why I would be 100% against that. It needs to be somebody from within that same department so that they have those little idiosyncrasies with their guys. You know, if Bob and Joe can't work together because they are both single and they happen to swipe, you were talking about it, they swiped right on the same girl and they got pissed because they were both dating the same girl. So now they can't work together. If I'm a captain, I'm not putting them on the rescue together. But new guy just sees names and he puts them in there. Like, you gotta manage the people that you have. And it makes it real hard if you come into a situation in a firehouse and you have 12 personalities that have worked together for a long time and they've found their lanes and they stay in their lanes. And now you come in and you're like, hey, everybody in the same lane. Let's see what happens. But again, we're all entitled to our 2 cents, and that's my quarter's worth.
I don't think anybody would disagree with anything that you just said. I think that the reason why it's on the table, number one, is because a lot of management above fire chiefs are saying, well, this is the way society is going. They're forcing their hand. They don't have that option.
In corporate America, sure.
Sure, in corporate America. And guess where corporate America is coming? They're coming to local government for security because they don't have that in corporate America. So now we have people that were in corporate America now running local governments. So there's that. Again, that fact is not fair. And so if the fire chief wants to keep his or her job, they have to, and this is where I was going with that, is they have to at least entertain that conversation. That doesn't mean that they have to make that decision. Does that make sense? And so the other part of that is if the fire chief has to own that responsibility, then the organization has to own the responsibility is don't screw over the fire chief in making him make a decision he didn't want to have to make. Make sure that people are there ready to take that seat. So I'm going to go back and say if Bobby is off, then Johnny needs to be ready to go up and make that hole and make that cut. And the station captain needed to be prepared because if not, he wasn't worth a flip. Okay.
And that goes back to, I think we said on the last podcast, where you need to celebrate other people's accomplishments.
Yes.
If you're the captain, Brian, why are you taking Fire Officer 1? Are you coming after my job?
Right.
Stop it. Stop it. No, you are such a great captain. I want to learn from you. I'm going to take these classes, and eventually one day you're going to move up to battalion chief or assistant chief or fire marshal, or you're going to retire. And that seat is going to open. I'm not here to take your job. I'm here to learn from you and hopefully one day succeed you. And that's where you need to celebrate other people's accomplishments, not fear them.
Right. 100%. I love it. What's number 4?
Number 4 is coordinating agency resources. They say that that's a critical thing in the fire service because when large-scale emergencies occur, which we've seen some of these now, Michigan actually just experienced one of these. I don't know if it made its way to Virginia or North Carolina, but we had a shooting at a splash pad, and there were some people that were injured. And so there was multiple agencies from multiple counties because it was close to that line. Mm-hmm. So now you had counties that have rules that they abide by, and now you have 2 separate ones. You had police and fire working together. You had career departments and part paid departments working together. You had sheriff's deputies and municipal police departments working together. So you have all of these interagencies that are trying to communicate, trying to work together to solve this common goal. And I believe they did a great job. I did not have firsthand knowledge or visual of it, but I know from hearing that there are those hiccups, there are those problems. Radio channels weren't on this company's radios because they don't always run with them or what have you. And so what is a better way? What is a better approach? How can we maybe secure better funding so that we're not just making sure that a small town fire department can talk to each other, and when we get on scene, we can put out the fire or mitigate whatever emergency we respond to. How can we train together with medium-sized city and Whoville or what have you, so that in the event that the 3 of us are converging on one area, it doesn't take 20 minutes to uncluster the F and be effective first responders and helpers during an emergency.
Adam,
Ooh,
is that you?
I saw a big breath from Brian.
It was because I, you said something about funding, and I love that, and I hate it all in the same breath, because
Sure.
I'm the type of person that I hate when people bring up funding, and not saying that I hate that you brought that up, but because I'm the type of person that I know how long it takes to get funding. And so my solution is I don't want someone to die because I was waiting for $1. Right.
Sure.
So my mindset automatically goes back to, what do I need to do to fix this with zero money? And so my solution is, I'm going to work through the process of fixing this until I can get the easier solution in the funding. Right. And I don't want to say this is my sneaky way of doing this, but I don't necessarily always need to tell those above me that, because if they found out that I could do it for free, they're not going to give me the money. Right. So I know that, but at the same time, so let's give an example. I've got VFD over here running in a VHF radio with a other municipal department running an 800. How do I solve that problem? Well, sometimes what I do is I pair these two organizations up together, and I say, hey, if you have an incident, you pair person A up with person B on a unit, and that's how you communicate. Or you put someone at the command post. You have to have those people together so that way they can communicate together. That costs $0. It is a protocol. It is not $1. And so I'm just using that as an analogy here. And in the meantime, that is, it moves as fast as you can sign off on it in an organization, as soon as you can train on it, as soon as you can move it. But I think the other part of that is, I think one of the things that you mentioned is that's holistic in the cog of response. That's everybody from getting dispatch to understand to the receiving hospital to understand how this system is going to have. The CRR model, I was talking to some police officers recently, and one of the things that I told them is, I said, if you've never gone to NFA's website and taken the CRR class, these are community police officers, so their whole focus and mission is preventing some of the police stuff. I said, man, you could take the fire out of it and put police in it, and this would be a well worth class for you, because it talks about solving problems with no money. Because in the prevention world, hey, I'm going to buy $1.5 million for a fire truck. By the way, I cut your pencil line and everything else. Well, why? Because I needed to spend 1.5 on a truck. That's why. That's why we cut your budget. So same thing, you take that model. So again, coming back to it, it's very hard for me on these complex incidences to swallow that because of the processes. So I look at it, we jokingly talked about it, I think on the last podcast you were on, about the natural disasters that we're all good at responding to. And if we just take some of those lessons learned, whether it's snow events in Michigan, whether it's hurricanes on the East Coast, or earthquakes on the West Coast, or wildfires and tornadoes, and we take those lessons learned and just flip them into whatever tragedy it is that we're talking about, it takes it from a high frequency event and puts it right into the low frequency, and we can take it and run with it. That's all we have to do. Is we just got to take off our I saw it the other day, our reading glasses, and put on our sunglasses. Is just looking at it through a different lens. And I think that is 90% of it. Because if we're waiting on the money, people are going to die. And I don't know how else to say it other than that. That's my big breath. That's why, because I'm not okay with that, of saying, well, it's a funding problem. It is, but it's not. That's an excuse, and I'm not in it for excuses. So,
Unkie, what do you guys run into with DOD/municipal trying to work together? Because I know you guys go out into the community, right?
Yes. Yeah, we go out there. We every single one of our bases runs some sort of mutual aid. And so we run out with them all the time.
Do they run in?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Sometimes they even come onto the base without us knowing. It's a whole CAD issue sometimes with the cities. So somebody calls 911, they're on base, it will actually go to the city dispatcher.
Oh.
If you're calling from a cell phone, it'll go to a city dispatcher, and they've been told previous chief to send your units, and not they're supposed to send just like everybody else. I like to say everybody else, but to send your units. Then I'm gonna call your dispatcher and be like, "Hey, you got something going on in your area? I got units coming. Do you still need them?"
Right.
And that's when we get everybody on the road. You can cancel up later. So we very rarely, it's gotten better, but somebody calls from a cell phone, number one, it will go to the city, and the city will send their units. And sometimes we get notified, sometimes we don't. So
I literally, I have a jurisdiction. I just want to kind of supplement what he just said. I have a jurisdiction that's real close that responds auto aid to another county. And quite regularly, I hear them chime in on the radio, say, Fire Central Station, whatever, I'm responding to this location for an automatic fire alarm or a structure fire or whatever in this area. Put me on that call, because of the delay to get it from this PSAP to this PSAP. There's just too much of a delay.
mm-hmm.
And
get them rolling, and you can always cancel.
Well, I mean, you know what they did? They fixed it, and it didn't cost them anything. They fixed it. They got the wheels rolling, and they know that, again, they control their controllables. And what's out of their control is getting their dispatch centers with high turnover rates to drop that intertwined real quick. So you know what they do? They suck it up and they listen to another county frequency, and they listen for that to drop. And it sucks, but at least when they're up and they're moving around, they're getting trucks en route sooner, faster. For who? For them. Not for us, not for me, but for them. And so they have found a no-cost solution to a problem that delays service to the citizens, and kudos to them. And they've been doing that for probably close to a decade or more. So, and several chiefs, it's just what they do. And it works, because again, they can't fix that problem. It's not, you can't make somebody fix something that is not your decision to fix or change something. So,
and I think for me to put a bow on this, and obviously I'm pretty passionate about training. I really believe, and it's real easy. It is real easy to not train.
yeah,
It is real easy to not do something, to throw a John Norman DVD in and sit and watch 45 minutes of John Norman catching jobs in the cock loft. But I really want to challenge those training officers, those chiefs, the firefighters, the lieutenants, the captains, whoever's listening, all 7 million of you out there. Do trainings with neighboring departments and make it fun, make it silly, make it stupid, but identify those problems that you may run into before lives are on the line, before property is on the line, before something bad is happening. Get together and, one of my favorite trainings, maybe not my favorite, but one of the ones that I think is really cool is you get in one room, you got guys on air with an SCBA with their fire gloves on, and you give them one of those little $5 Legos. But you take the instructions away, and you put them in another room with a dude with a radio. And the dude with the radio has to tell you how to put that Lego together in the other room, and you're on air with your fire gloves on. So it's dexterity, conserving air. Meanwhile, you're working on communication. It sounds silly, but bring that neighboring community in with their radios, or even better, have them at their station 7 miles away, and you be at your station.
yeah.
All right, tell me how to put this Lego together. And then now you're looking at like, man, we had some real bad radio static, or it was dropping, or they didn't have our channel on their portable radios. So we had to figure that out, whatever the problem is. Now you can identify it while you're having fun. You're actually doing some training, you get to know the neighboring community, the guys and gals that you're working with. I see no negatives outside of you're going to have to get up out of the chair.
Yeah.
You might have to drive to a neighboring community. But
so I'm gonna say, even if you don't want to spend the $5, I've seen that done, and I recreated it with our Explorer program with a Googled picture. Just draw a picture on a dry erase board, right? So a group's in the captain's office or whatever, and you Google an image, whatever it is, and it doesn't even cost you the $5 Lego set.
Yeah.
You could just go Google a picture, any picture you want, and then have them draw it the best that they can. Say, hey, there's some happy little trees over here on the left-hand side. And then what happens is, number one, is you get a good laugh out of it, right? Because nobody can really draw worth a flip. But then at the same token is it really works on communication and, like you said, the dexterity and everything else, because you're trying to communicate a picture. And think about how descriptive, like you said, with the Legos or even a photo, how we need to be, right? Like, is it a big mountain? What's a big mountain, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
You're trying to do
the page? Is it the full? Yeah.
Right. And so in your mind, it's one thing to say, hey, find the block that's got 4 little pieces. That's the red one. That's, whatever. But in that instance, it really helps you. And I loved it because the training officer that I heard was, not only is it free, it really helps us to keep our communication short, but descriptive enough to paint a picture to give whatever message it is that we're trying to send as clear as possible to paint a picture. Yeah. And I loved that. I thought that was so cool. So I won't take that credit. That was a training officer that I saw on a TikTok recently, and I did it, and my explorers ate it up. They loved it. So I think this is a good podcast.
I think we killed it. This was good. We had a lot of good conversation. Hold on, who wrote this? Maybe we won't say his name. Andy Starnes. Thanks for the topic.
There you go.
Hope we didn't rip you apart too much. He's got to be a listener.
Name.
Andy Starnes. He's got to be a listener.
The name sounds familiar.
He is a battalion chief with a large metropolitan department in North Carolina.
Yep, I knew that name.
Well, Andy, thanks for the topic. Hope we didn't blow you up too much.
I love it.
Make sure you guys are training. Make sure you guys are following. Make your purchases on Unkie seasonings. It's the cookout month.
Yeah.
Also, real quick, our other sponsor, Burn Box. Check them out. If you don't subscribe, you can get one-off boxes. You get a 3-pack, a 5-pack. You can get it every month. I tell you what, we all of us receive boxes, and they are packed full of goodies. It is definitely worth your time and your energy to subscribe.
Hey,
boys.
I was going to say, before I forget, happy 4th of July. This will be launched. And so happy 4th of July.
5th. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be the 5th. So,
happy Independence Day.
I hope you'll have all your fingers when this episode drops.
Currently, while you are listening to this, I am in Branson, Missouri.
When you're listening to this, it's my girl's birthday.
Ooh. How about that? Happy birthday,
July 5th.
Madison and Moreau.
Yeah.
Love it. So with that, who's going to say it?
Unkie this time.
Unkie, you do it.
La 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 la. Roll it, Gigi.
Roll it, Gigi.
Before you leave, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and give these firemen a huge thumbs up. Also, make sure you check out the coolfireman.com for more. Thanks!